welcome to everyone to the international sports sector. And welcome to
this section.
Yeah, we actually revealing our guests. So, one a moment, we are going to put you down. Sorry for that. Sorry, these kind of things happened in this in the Streamly. So we are not going to have any surprise, but at least doesn't matter. We are going to introduce ourselves, and then we can prepare for our guests again. So
exactly. Okay, so I will start by introducing you. Intellectual property lawyer here at the European Union, a lawyer, Yasmina here, an amazing professional. And I'm Carmen Junquera. I'm a cluster host interviewer. And well, that's what's up for us both. And I think Yasmina introducing the guest before was also good because we were creating hype. You know, they saw him for a second there and then he was gone.
So now we can see and introduce our amazing guests. So be prepared for Chris.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry to spoil everyone, but we tried for the next time to not do it so.
I'm happy to be here regardless, so thank you.
We're happy to have you here. Exactly. So, Yasmina, do you want to start sharing questions? Because we've got so many things to talk about with you, Chris. So let's start.
Yeah, with the first question, I actually want you to just introduce yourself because, of course, our audience doesn't know you. So it will be a great opportunity to know who is Chris Kissack, if you can let us to know you a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So my name is Chris Kissack, and I'm an esports advisor for the Isle of Man government. I'm a lifelong gamer. As we were talking just before, I've been playing video games for 36 years. I've worked in the esports industry for the last sort of 4 or 5 years now. And hopefully I've got some really good insights and I can share about what's happening here on the Isle of Man, how I work in the industry and what opportunities there are for people as well to enter into the industry without being a pro player or a caster. There's lots of areas that people can work in the industry that maybe they don't necessarily know about.
Yeah, we always talk about this, right? In the last interview with Ondrek, we're talking about all the careers that you can make out of esports rather than just being a caster. And well, I think you will provide very insightful replies to our questions. So what I wanted to ask you, you've told us a little bit about your experience as a gamer when we were in the backstage. So could you tell us once again here, because it was very interesting. You competed at like age 7, 6?
Yeah. I grew up in a household that was very football obsessed. So my father was a big football fan, and try as I might, I couldn't sort of get into football and follow football. And one day he came home with an old Atari, and I was just drawn to it. It was Space Invaders and Pitfall, and I loved it. I played as much as I could. And then when I was around 7, so this is about 1980, 87, 88, I was in Blackpool in the UK, and I ended up going to a Space Invaders tournament. I didn't compete, but my mind was just blown, the fact that you could play video games competitively. And, I was hooked since then. Anything that I could get my hands on to consume competitive video gaming, whether or not it was watching it live in tournaments, or albeit sort of before the days of the internet. So these were physical tournaments. But as I grew up, getting my hands on tapes of StarCraft tournaments, and just it was an amazing time to be involved in competitive video gaming back then, before it was even really called esports, and seeing kind of the industry really start to build its foundations. I was never good enough to compete competitively, I could admit that, but I was just obsessed by this industry and how I could get involved and bring value into it. And at the very kind of early stages, when there was opportunities when the internet cafes were becoming so popular.
It's true.
There was opportunities to run tournaments myself, albeit sort of small local tournaments, but get
Okay.
involved running tournaments. And this was back in the days of Quake, Unreal Tournament, and just, you know, it was a platform to learn about opportunities within competitive video games. And, you know, my career as I went through sort of professional career wise, at that time, I didn't really see any parallels with what I was doing for a job into the esports space. But as you know, as the industry started to grow and become more structured, you would need, you know, everything from companies being formed to bank accounts to, if you were running more professional tournaments, you would need assistance in making sure that the winnings were held and paid out, taxes, all of the things behind the scenes that I was doing for a job anyway. I worked in the corporate sector. And, you know, light bulb moments started to go off, thinking, wow, actually, this industry that I love so much does need all of these other things I'm doing as a day job. So over the last kind of 5-6 years, I've really started to pivot what I do for a living into the esports industry. So yeah, so it's, you know, I may be going down a rabbit hole of answering your question. So, and I know we've got a lot to go through,
it's
so please just
perfect.
kick me if I'm going down a rabbit hole.
No, it's perfect, because actually you started with a point that I wanted to, that my next question is related with that. It's like, you tell us a little bit how was your background, why you feel so passionate about it. And now I wanted to know, in what moment, which was the opportunity that gave you, like, now that is the starting point to start in the esports sector. How was this situation? How was the opportunity that you take and you say, now is the time? How was it? If you can tell us a little bit.
I think looking at, so here on the Isle of Man, we were very successful in a number of sectors. So the e-gaming and the betting industry is one of them. You know, and there are, you know, some of the world's largest betting companies are headquartered here, licensed here, staffed here. So e-gaming and betting and gambling is always been prevalent on the island, and as the esports industry started to become more mainstream and people in different sectors started to wake up to this thing that actually people playing competitive video games or just playing video games, there's a whole industry around this. And the Isle of Man government, you know, was aware of this, and it looked at what it had done in the betting space and the e-gaming space, and said, well, how can we as a jurisdiction and our own government step into this space? How can we do this authentically? Was the first thing. And the Isle of Man's population is fairly small in the grand scheme of things. So we're a population of 85,000. And I'd already been kind of working alongside government in a few different projects anyway, outside of esports. And when I heard that people within the digital space department within government were looking at exploring esports as a new sector, literally I worked around the corner from government offices. So it was a case of kind of knocking on the door and say, hey, you know, I like esports and I like competitive video games. I'd really like to be part of whatever discussions you're having. And I was very fortunate to be able to be included in those initial talks, exploring, well, what does the Isle of Man have to offer the esports industry? And then, you know, fast forward a few years, and they were committed to entering the space, and they needed someone on board as head of esports to kind of drive the different initiatives. So I threw my hat into the ring and was very fortunate to be able to land that role. And, you know, I'm very, very, I feel very privileged and very lucky, because I'm very passionate about where I live and where I come from on the island, and being able to fly the Isle of Man's flag into this industry that I also love dearly as well is incredible. And, you know, it's been an amazing kind of just the past 12 months in the role and advising government. And the Isle of Man has definitely been on the map in the esports space, hence coming on podcasts like this. And, you know, people hearing about what the Isle of Man has to offer in the space. So I think it answered your question in a long round kind of way. You know, that moment came by me kind of taking the initiative and kind of knocking on the door and saying, right, we have all these pieces in place to really step into this. I'd like to be part of that, and just making that initiative just to go out there and ask those questions.
So maybe you can say, sorry, I just wanted to say that maybe our audience should take your advice and simply when they see the opportunity, grab it. Just knock at the door.
Absolutely. Especially in the esports industry. So there's so many opportunities within the space, but unfortunately the esports industry spotlight is on players, is on tournaments, and to manage all of that, for the industry to grow, it needs people behind the scenes, but not necessarily you hear about. It needs accountants, it needs HR professionals, it needs the guys that write the copy for the marketing of different events. It needs everything that a typical industry would have. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of people at a young age, when they want to step into esports, they want to go after the most exciting things. And the reality it is the same as other sports is, the small percentage of actually making it as a pro player, just the same as if you wanted to be a footballer or a tennis player, it is fairly small. It's not to say it can't happen. It's not to say that you can't still play kind of semi-professionally. You can't still compete in tournaments, but actually to make a career out of it, I think you need to be thinking outside the box on what areas, and also what you're very good at from a skills point of view. I mean, I'm not very good at, competing professionally. I'm pretty good at Hearthstone, but apart from that, I never cut it as a Valorant player, and especially not now. But what I am good at doing is the corporate stuff, is looking at corporate structures. I'm quite good at throwing a tax hat on and speaking tax. And the industry needs that, so it is always an exciting and interesting conversation to have with young people that want to step into the space, to say, well, actually, what are you skilled at? Forget about esports. What are you skilled at? And it could be marketing, it could be graphic design, it could be accountancy. You could be really good at project management, and crafting your value around that and approaching that. It's very easy to approach the industry and say, hey, I love video games and I'm really good at Valorant. Let's pick Valorant again. I'm really good at these games, but so is millions of other people. But approaching it with, I'm studying accountancy, or I'm really good at, or I've got a passion for problem solving. And the industry I think has turned a corner over the last few years that it's not been so closed. It's realized if we're going to grow, we need other skill sets. We need other skilled individuals to come in and help us to grow at the right pace and to grow the right way. We need all these different skills.
Okay, so of course we need individuals that are willing to fulfill all these roles that are not so seen in the scene. But of course we also need diversity here, and this is something that I do want to ask you about, because you are an advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. You've been working for that as well, for women in esports. Tell us about that passion of yours. How does that combine with esports, and what you've been doing when it comes to it?
I think anybody that follows my content or follows me knows I'm very active on LinkedIn, as an example. And I think being able to use my voice on that platform to, especially if we look at Pride Month as an example, in the run up to that, it was an opportunity for me to create some content that showcased that gaming should be for everybody. Whether or not you're male or female or from the LGBTQ plus community, if you have disabilities. As we were saying before we went live, the more awesome people that are in esports, the better. Because anybody that knows who plays competitive video games, when you join a queue or you join a lobby, what you want out of that experience is to have fun. And if you can be playing with somebody that isn't a jerk, is just there to have fun, and that's all the better. So the more people that are actually entering into the space, and the more safe spaces that we can create, is for the better. So I don't necessarily think, I see myself as a champion for women in games or for LGBTQ+. I think more of a champion for encouraging anybody to get involved in the space. And if there are barriers, as we've spoken about before, unfortunately, to certain groups to be able to enter into the space, and they do need to be knocked down. But at the same time, I think any opportunity to shine a light on what somebody is doing to encourage more diversity in the space, I will absolutely champion that. I will reshare it. I will follow it. I will make some noise about it. As I said, the more awesome people in playing video games, the better.
Well, I think we can just say thank you for what you do to raise your voice and talk about this kind of thing. It's really important to bring up this conversation.
No, thank you. And the more, I think, the more people that in a position of influence that do use their voice to talk about these sort of things, hopefully it will encourage more people. It will encourage, well, actually, I can see this guy from the Isle of Man, he's shouting on LinkedIn about how, little things like pronouns on your profile name. Somebody asked me recently why I still have that on there. It's very clear that, you're a bearded dude. You don't need to advise that your pronouns are he and him. And I don't put it on there for myself. I put it on if there's somebody else out there that thinks actually, I'm looking for that courage, or I'm looking for that nudge to say, I can put that on there as well. And even if it's only one person that feels brave enough to be able to add that on there, you should do that. You should look at that. I think the more people in the space that use their voice to be heard, not just for a particular month, not just for Pride Month, and not just because their company is running some sort of initiative. I think it should be constant. And I do my best. I'm not perfect, but I try my best.
No, but at least you do, I think, as we say before the meeting, actually, the presentation, we think that the race that you're saying and the race of awareness that you're doing, it's pretty amazing. So everyone should actually check his profile, because I think he raises awareness of a lot of things, and it's quite important nowadays. So now we wanted to focus now a little bit about the Isle of Man, because maybe some of our guests didn't know all the opportunities or all the advantages. So before we start with the meeting here, I think we're going to show a little bit of clip. So you just take a look about the Isle of Man, and then we can actually see how it can be really an investment and a place to actually can grow the esports sector. So just take a look. One moment.
One of the best things about the Isle of Man is the fact that you can be at the forefront of the industry we're in, i.e. in this instance e-gaming, yet we've got the relaxed lifestyle, the clean air, etc.
The ability to move from work to our wonderful environment so quickly, particularly on my bike. I love cycling on the Isle of Man.
The culture, I guess. I love theatre, and we have the most amazing theatre on the island.
It might sound strange, but I just love fresh air, and when you leave this island and go to some of the cities, you realise how polluted they've become.
It's very safe, it's very rural, there's not many cars on the road, and it's a great place if you like outdoor activities like me.
I love that video. I'm so glad you picked that. I didn't know you were gonna, until we joined like half an hour ago, I didn't know you were gonna pick that. It was a good video. I know pretty much everybody that you interviewed there, and I'm actually having lunch with the first chap, Mark, that that's on that video tomorrow. And that kind of, I suppose, is another advantage about on the island, just as an example there. We are a small island. We're 30 miles by 13 miles. We're or thereabouts. We're in the middle of the Irish Sea. But you can. There's a phrase over here that it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. But putting a positive spin on that is you can have a meeting with your lawyer, your bank manager, an investor, a colleague, all in Well, that's not, that background is not from the Isle of Man. I don't know where that is.
No, but it's good. It's a little bit
Yeah.
so to everyone try to know a little bit the Isle of Man, and of course it's an island. So I came from
yes.
an island too, so I understand that you know everyone in the island.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. You know, when I invite people to come to the island and see the place for themselves. One of the best things is that you can, like I said, you can have a meeting in the morning with so many different people, especially from a startup space and a networking space, without having to jump on the tube and travel halfway across the city. Or and it's just a beautiful place. It's so beautiful, and we were really fortunate during the kind of the height of the pandemic last year that we didn't have any lockdowns. We had no COVID restrictions. And from an esports point of view, we were probably one of the only places in this part of the world, if not the whole world, that was running esports tournaments without social distancing, without masks. And I really looked to take advantage of that opportunity, and with the young people that we've got here, that the next generation of gamers, being able to use that opportunity as much as we could. And we ran some amazing tournaments over last year, from Rocket League to we did a great Smash tournament as well. And that's one of the things that is really exciting about my role is meeting the next generation of champions in the esports space. I'm not getting any younger. I turn 40 next month. But it's so important for me to be able to support kind of the young generation coming up that are going to be the future leaders in esports, and being able to help them structure things professionally, being able to help introduce them to whether or not it's investors or partners, or help them get a bank account set up if they're a tournament operator, if it's a team or group of players that want to set up an org, making sure that they structure things in a way that their IP is protected, that their logo is protected, that they get a bank account set up, that their contracts, introducing them to lawyers who I've spent time with educating on the esports space. So that's probably the most exciting thing about my role is working with the next generation of esports decision makers and champions. And on an island, it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to identify when these people are coming out from their bedrooms and saying, hey, actually I can see that the head of esports, it's not just a political guy in a suit. He is a gamer. He's been playing games for a very long time. And they're authentic in their approach. And I think I get asked a lot from people in different jurisdictions on how can my government create the same thing that you're doing over there from an esports initiative. And it always comes back down to authenticity. As we all know on this call and people that are watching, the esports industry and the video game industry and its fans can be very protective. They can be very reactive. They can be very, I suppose, judgmental as well if they see a new name or a new face coming in. And if you can showcase that you're putting value into the industry before you try and take value out, you'll be welcomed, and that will be a benefit to you as whatever you're trying to do, whether or not you're trying to get a job in esports, or you're trying to, launch an initiative, or you're trying to create a podcast. If you can showcase that you're bringing value to the industry before you try and take value out, you'll be welcomed and you'll go far. And that's what we try to do here on the island, and so far it's worked really well.
So precisely regarding this issue, I wanted to ask you how, because the majority of the audience that we have are professionals from the sector, or maybe the people that want to get involved in the sector. So, for example, which advantages they will have if they, for example, they want to go to the Isle of Man and try to start up there and try to have a business related with esport, which advantages they could find there?
What advantages?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the advantages are that it's, we're very supportive when it comes to creating any businesses here. So if you're a startup or you're an entrepreneur or you want to create a business, the Isle of Man has got some amazing support schemes if you're willing to relocate and start a life here. Everything within government really is driven by job creation. If you're going to show that you're going to create jobs, then we will welcome you with open arms. And there is many supports, funding and support schemes that we will help you to grow your business. We do have tax advantages as well. So is zero corporation tax and zero capital gains tax being our own independent offshore jurisdiction. We're only we're less really than an hour's flight from London. We're around half an hour flight to Liverpool and Manchester.
Wow.
So we're perfectly positioned. We've got extremely low crime rate, and as I said, you can do business quickly. You can meet with your team, your bank managers. You can come and have a chat with somebody within government, all within the same day. Whereas in other countries or in other locations and jurisdictions, that can take a long time. You got to go through a lot of hoops. So we're very forward-thinking, and there's a lot of advantages and a lot of benefits to coming here. And I think our infrastructure is probably one of the most welcoming as well. So there are other islands out there where they're not as stable with power, as an example. Certain offshore jurisdictions. I won't name any names, but they are rife with power cuts, as an example. And we don't really get power cuts here on the Isle of Man. So if you're playing professional video games or you're doing anything in the esports space, having stable and reliable power is pretty important. We're committed to rolling fiber out across the island. So our internet is a priority for the island as well. We also have fantastic infrastructure from data centers point of view. So if you're doing something from a back end side of things and you need data center, we've got world-class data centers here. So there really is a lot of advantages to coming here, especially from a boot camping point of view. I've been speaking to some tier 1 orgs recently who are looking at the island as a boot camp location. So if they've got their Dota squad or their league squad, and they want to boot camp them somewhere where there's low crime, that they know that they're going to be safe, they can be focused. And also, one of the initiatives that I've been working on recently is looking at how we can tap into the local mental health and performance coaching. So we've, a good friend of mine, he runs a mindfulness festival. He's on the island, and he does coaching and guided meditation. And it's been interesting over the last few years to see the commitment from esports organizations to that side of things. It's no longer just finding a room or a hotel room or renting a house that's got fast internet connection and state-of-the-art computers, and just there you go, just play for 12, 13 hours a day, if not more, and come out when you're good enough. That doesn't work anymore. You've got to be looking at, are they eating right? Are they sleeping right? Are they communicating well as a team? Can they handle the pressure of competing at that level? Do they have the right support network within the org? And the Isle of Man has got some fantastic expertise here that have been working in that space. So as a location to boot camp a team, we're quite attractive. And as you saw in that video, we're also a UNESCO biosphere, so the air is clean. It's a beautiful place to live and get your head in the right space to be able to focus on what you want to do. And if that's competing at a professional level, we can help with that.
Definitely, Carmen. I think now maybe I would love to go to the Isle of Man. Maybe we can start a business there.
I'm thinking about it. It sounds so nice, so peaceful, relaxing, and the mental health focus is so important. As you said, burnout is no longer considered something good. Like, oh, he plays 13 hours a day. That means that he's committed. No, that means that he's got a problem. He needs to rest. He needs that kind of thing. So you've mentioned some organizations that want to bootcamp there, and I cannot help but ask you if there are any names that you can give us. Perhaps,
please.
Let's just say they're tier 1 orgs in the Dota scene. That's all. That's all I can share.
Okay, we'll take that as a maybe we'll get an answer in the backstage. But I also want to ask you about organizations that we know are collaborating with you, like Team X7. I've seen that partnership going on, and I wanted to ask you. Well, you've told us quite a bit about what you bring to the teams, what you bring to these organizations, these companies. But what do they bring to you, and how is that alliance working?
Well, that's a fantastic partnership. I mean, Josh, who's the founder of X7, he ex-professional player in League of Legends, and he's on the chat. Go on, in the chat there. So, but no, Josh from X7, he approached us pretty early on when he had, the concept of creating this professional esports organization, which ultimately became X7. And it was really important, again, looping back around to that authenticity, that we supported him as much as we could. So not only because it was the right thing to do, but also to showcase as an island that we were really committed to this esports initiative. So, I spent some time with Josh on helping him from crafting the initial pitch decks to be able to approach whether or not it's other sponsors or approach government to say, look, we've got this opportunity. And at the time it was entering into the UKEL to put our name alongside them and ultimately get our name on their shirts. And, the experience of assisting Josh and continuing to assist Josh as well was so valuable to us. And, we couldn't have been more fortunate to align ourselves with an org like X7 because they're very committed on the professional side of things, on making sure that everything that they do is to such a high standard. So to align, especially from a government point of view, to align our name with an org, it was very important that we had that kind of marriage that X7 and digital could have there. And we're super excited to be at the start of their journey as well. I mean, they're only going to go on to do bigger and better things. Recently, they've acquired another UK org as well. And being able to be part of this journey, was super. We're very privileged to be able to be a part of that. But also it shows, as I said at the beginning, it does show that the Isle of Man government and Digital Isle of Man is authentic in their approach. We're so committed to this, and we're one of the only governments in the world, I'd say, to be able to take that leap, to be able to showcase that we are sponsoring a professional esports org.
We are looking forward to see how they do in the future. We are really excited about it, and now knowing that they are sponsored by you at the Isle of Man, we definitely will keep an eye on them. Who knows what they might do in the future?
Oh, absolutely. X7.gg, just to kind of plug that in there.
Perfect. And of course, as a lawyer, I have to ask you, because I wanted to know if there is any regulation regarding esport in the Isle of Man, because I don't know if you are aware, but here in Spain, we actually don't have a proper regulation about it. So it would be nice to know how much the government has been involved, if they have made any rules specific for the sector, and of course your point of view, if you see that it was a proper approach, or you think it's better not to touch it. Because sometimes I feel like in Spain it's better to see how it's going to evolve instead of cutting the freedom that we have actually with this sector, because actually we have all the tools. So I wanted to know a little bit your point of view.
It's a really good question. Honestly, it's a really good question.
Good to know.
It's challenging, really, because the esports industry and the video game industry has always seen itself as a little bit, punk rock, in that it doesn't necessarily need to abide by rules of other industries. And it's grown in a way that has had that freedom to be able to grow without necessarily all those rules in place. But at the same time, without certain rules and regulations in certain sectors, you end up creating bad actors and bad apples, and it can be, damaging for the growth of the industry. The Isle of Man has got a really good track record in the regulation side of things. And if you look at the e-gaming space, an Isle of Man license in the betting world is seen as a gold standard. It's like a gold badge. We've, our Gambling Supervision Commission has done extremely well in that space. If you look at the shipping industry from an Isle of Man point of view as well, again, flying an Isle of Man flag is considered, one of the best in the world. So, we had a reputation, and we do have a reputation from a regulation side of things, that when we get into that particular sector, we do it right. So we have started, and over the last 12 months, we have been working on a regulation or a type of code of conduct, or whatever it may be at the end of it, which is importantly fit for purpose. We can't come in and marry exactly how we regulated the betting industry, as an example. It's got to be fit for purpose. And to do that, we've spent time with publishers, with tournament operators, the biggest in the world, to be able to invite them to the table, albeit a virtual one, but invite them to the table to say, well, okay, look, if we were going to be regulating your sector and your industry, how do we go about doing that is going to be welcomed, that you're going to welcome this. And it's been really interesting to be able to be part of those conversations. The Isle of Man is also one of the founding members of ESIC, and it's again, it comes back to authenticity, because if you do that wrong, if you try and step into the industry as a gatekeeper, or as trying to police the sector, and you don't do it right, again, coming back down to that mantra of putting value in before you try and take value out, it can be damaging for your reputation. So, I'm probably going off on a massive tangent here, but in answer to your question, yeah, we are looking at regulation, and have been and continue to do so. And we're excited of what we'll bring to the table, but we're making sure that whatever we do bring to the table is right. So watch this space.
I think that's really important, and it's really nice to know people who actually knows how this sector is so evolving, and how important it's actually not to ruin it, but just cutting the straight, if I can say it in somehow. So it was really nice to hear you.
But it's also it's also having conversations from your side. It's having conversations with lawyers. It's having conversations outside of what you might traditionally think an esports regulation would need. Everything. IP. Being an IP lawyer yourself. You know how important it is to factor that sort of things in it. And so, we're really fortunate that here on the Isle of Man, again, another plug, but here on the Isle of Man, we have some exceptionally talented lawyers here. So, they're ongoing conversations, and we're excited to showcase what we're bringing to the table.
I'm really excited to hear more in the near future, if possible.
Maybe you'll invite me back again when we announce what we're
happy to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the word is already being spread on several media websites, several news websites about what efforts are being done at the Isle of Man. And also, I wanted to ask you, personally speaking, what changes you've noticed from these past few months to today? What main changes you've noticed? What companies have joined? What are the main concerns? You talked about safety, but yeah, tell us about your experience when it comes to this period of time.
You mean what companies have come to the Isle of Man, or what businesses?
What changes in general have you noticed? Have more companies joined the Isle of Man since this was started? What is your personal point of view?
From a team's point of view, or a boot camping point of view, we're only just at the start, as our borders, just like the rest of the world, as borders start to open up and travel becomes freer, we're starting to see more people come to visit the island and just see what it's all about. You can watch a video, you can hear some bearded dude getting excited about it and saying you have to come here, but ultimately you need to get here to see it. So we're starting to see more and more people, whether or not it's seeing something I post on LinkedIn, or just had their eyes on the island for a while, starting to see them come to the island. And it's great to see that when they get here, there's a phrase, the island sells itself. So once they land here and they spend time here, they realize actually everything that those people were saying on that video is true. It's not just a marketing video. Personally, outside of the Isle of Man, what I'm seeing, there's obviously a real spotlight on things like the metaverse, and how brands can engage with its users, its fans, its customers in totally different ways. And I think esports and video gaming is leading the charge in so many ways in that. I would say I'm a big fan of Fortnite. I don't necessarily always agree or be eye to eye with how it approaches esports, but I'm a huge fan of their metaverse. I'm a huge fan of how they continue to push the bar on how they engage with their fans. And I've seen over the last kind of 6 months other brands start to wake up to that. Wake up to see, actually, it's not just this game that my son or my daughter play of an evening and want constantly more V-Bucks and more V-Bucks. Actually, it's a platform that platinum selling artists can run concerts in. It's a platform that you can engage with brands that normally wouldn't come together, whether or not it's competing brands like Marvel and DC or characters from TV shows. And it's I think for big brands, anybody who's not looking at the metaverse should be concerned. They should be worried if they've not got a department in their marketing team or their digital activation teams that isn't scrolling metaverse on a whiteboard and going crazy with ideas and how they can engage on that. Every year I always say that this is going to be the year of VR and VR engagement. And I'm still hopeful that we will get there, and we seem to edge closer more and more to that. So I've seen different brands looking at how, not necessarily how you can play VR games competitively, but how you can engage with fans in that VR space. I could spend the next couple of hours talking about kind of VR engagement for brands, and I won't bore you, but I'm quite excited to see where the future goes in that space.
Okay, we'll see it. We'll look at it as well, because once again, this affects us all. Even us that we're doing this podcast will also be affected by it. So definitely keep an eye on it.
Absolutely.
And I would love to ask you, because now that you're talking about this and how do you want to engage with the people to try to give an opportunity to the Isle of Man, have you any projects or any ideas how to go or to persuade them to come? Of course, I hope Esports Business Life is an opportunity to show the people around the world, especially Spanish speakers, to have an opportunity to go. Definitely, I would go.
Yeah, I mean, if you go onto the Visit Isle of Man website and the Locate website, which I will give to you to drop in comments somewhere.
Perfect, yes.
But really, it's just a case of getting here. If you're looking for a holiday or you're looking for a couple of days vacation, and if you can get to London, you can get to the Isle of Man, or you can get to Liverpool, you can get to the Isle of Man. If you're wanting a better place to live and work, we've got an amazing work-life balance here. I'm really excited to see as the world gets more of a hold on the pandemic and more people become vaccinated and more people feel comfortable to travel, that we're really going to see more and more people coming to the Isle of Man and experiencing it for themselves. I'm excited, and as my colleagues are, and everybody here on the island, and we're starting to see more and more visitors coming over and then returning and staying. They're not just coming for a holiday, they're coming here and they're looking and scouting out places to live. They're looking at houses, they're looking at what it would be like here. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Wow.
Perfect.
I mean, it being an island could bring up the question of more people want to move there, but it's an island, so maybe in the future there will be some trouble with it. But in any case, I do want to ask you though about people moving there, people visiting, and this is a very important point there, because we've got esports. What do you think of esports tourism? Do you think it could be an alternative source of income for the Isle of Man? How do you say this?
I think, we've started to see it already locally here. There's a few hotels. There's one hotel in particular that has started to create an esports type experience on their grounds.
I want to go there.
So it's they've converted a couple of their rooms and they've kitted them out with gaming stations and it's always busy at the weekends with everything from children's parties to offices that close or work at different hours. So there's one, as an example, in the betting world, in betting companies here, that they group of guys may finish at 7 o'clock in the morning, and rather than going home, they will go to the hotel and they will play Call of Duty for 5 hours and as a team. So it's been exciting to see those places like that hotel, look for opportunities to step into that space. And we've got VR centers opening up and all sorts of exciting places that, have really capitalized on this new exciting space, whether or not it's just video games or esports. I think it's still early days from a tourism point of view. I know in Asia, you've got really cool video game themed hotels and esports hotels. I do think it's important, if we focus on the hotel side of things, when you go away with your family or you're just traveling on your own and you check into your room, that you've got the ability to continue to game as well. So whereas historically you might be there on business and you want somewhere that you can get your laptop out and connect into the Wi-Fi, I think more so now is there a gamer chair there that I can game? I think if you were looking at where you were going to stay, okay, I've got this hotel and in the room there's a gamer chair in the corner and there's clearly set up for me to bring my laptop there, or it's got a PlayStation 4 or 5 and it's got an Xbox X in there. And it's also networked with other rooms as well. And that particular hotel would run tournaments across floors or across, you could log in, and I think that could be very cool. And I'm excited to kind of see that.
Oh, so thank you for the idea, Chris. I will now return as a caster and open my own hotel with this.
Brilliant. I will go there.
I will go there too. It's like a dream, a gamer's dream, isn't it?
Oh,
People
it would be amazing.
Not walk in and after partying there, I really want to go to the Isle of Man now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just thinking outside the box. I think there's no pushing back that this generation is, the future generation has so many different expectations on what they want from a holiday, from a hotel. When they're on a plane, I was speaking to a colleague of mine, and he's working with a software company that's registering here on the island, and they're doing some amazing things with the in-flight entertainment. So if you're on a long haul flight, and rather than on the screen on the back of the chair, and you just you can watch your movies, or you can plug a controller in and you can play a game against other people on the flight. How cool would that be? So
what is it?
Yeah,
I think it's brilliant. I like it.
Absolutely. So it's just it's thinking outside the box. And hopefully some of those businesses, they'll look to the island as a place that's brave enough to move forward in these other areas as well.
I imagine people flying overseas just to get to play together in a plane, which sounds like a really cool experience, to be honest. By the way, now that I'm approaching the last 10 minutes, I just want to remind people quickly that they can ask any questions that they want, and we'll bring them up. So feel free to do so. Yasmina, your turn.
And thank you so much, Carmen. Well, actually, we talk a lot about the Isle of Man, but we didn't talk anything about your job in the digital Isle of Man. So we actually want to tell us a little bit how your role is in the digital Isle of Man, how you help with the esports sector in this specific agency or industry. It's because I didn't quite get what is digital Isle of Man. So
okay. So the Isle of Man government has different agencies within it, and the agencies, we have a visit agency, and the visit agency looks after the tourism side of things. We have the locate agency, and the locate guys, they do an awesome job in assisting people who want to effectively relocate to the island, and whether or not that's as an individual basis or bring their business to the island. We have the finance agency, and the finance agency looks after everything from fintech, banking, finance, insurance, pensions. And then the digital agency, within the digital agency, we look after everything from cryptocurrency businesses here. We've got an amazing Bitcoin exchange here on the island. We look after esports, obviously falls under that remit, blockchain, the e-gaming side of things. And the agencies work together with each other as well and support each other. So my role advising in the digital agency is obviously anything that comes esports lands on my desk. Anything that relates to that, or the video game space. And really, it's an opportunity for me to sit down with them or jump on a call with them and see, well, what are you looking to do? If you're somebody locally and you're looking to run a tournament, I can introduce you to some production teams, or I can introduce you to some local casters or local observers. If you're a business, let's say you're a law firm and you want to understand a little bit more about the esports industry and what opportunities there could be for you to enter into that space, I will come in and visit you and spend some time with you and answer all the questions about the esports industry, from how you spell esports all the way up to case studies on contracts and IP. So really, I'm a facilitator, and I try and educate other individuals or other businesses that are looking to, whether or not it's education on the Isle of Man or education on the esports space.
Okay, so Chris, I'm gonna. Sorry, Yasmina.
No, go ahead.
I've got a question for you. Let's say if you are educating these people properly, how do you spell esports?
Ooh,
that's a challenging question.
No,
go ahead.
It's
you said you teach them to do this.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. It's one I used to get triggered on all the time. It used to just enrage me when I saw somebody spelling esports incorrectly, or how I felt it was incorrectly. But I've mellowed out, maybe because I am getting a little bit older. I have mellowed out recently and resided myself to the fact that there are so many other areas that I should be getting more frustrated on, lack of diversity or lack of support for other people coming into the space. But if I was asked how you spell esports correctly, it's capital E at the start of a sentence, and it's all lowercase in the middle of a sentence. It's the same as any word. There's no uppercase S, there's no dash between E and sports. However, I know in certain places, Germany is a great example, that they do have a different way in identifying, the word esports. But general rule of thumb is just treat it as any normal word. And I think across the industry, we've aligned ourselves that is the format to use. But is it something I get stressed about now? No, not really. Is it something that is important to educate on still, especially for individuals who are trying to enter the space? Because there are some people that do get triggered about it, and they can put a barrier in place to say, "Oh no, I'm not having a conversation with you because you've spelt it wrong." And I was one of those people many years ago, and I would be like, "No, that's our word. You shouldn't be doing that." But I don't get stressed about it anymore, to be honest. As I said at the beginning, if you're seen as authentic and you want to bring value into the industry, then it doesn't really matter how you spell it initially, as long as you're wanting to get into it for the right reasons.
So thank you for giving this answer. I think this is a question that many people have, in fact, like how they write this.
Yes, we actually have a discussion previously, Carmen and I once, and we were discussing how we write it, because of course in Spain we have like a rule, and then it was like, because I was telling him that in my office we actually write it in another way, and it was like, how is the correct way to do it? And before we go to the question, because I think there have pretty much some of them, and it's going to be really interesting, I want to take advantage and just ask you if you can tell us a little bit an anecdote. How was for you, like working in the digital Isle of Man or with the government and trying to explain esports sector, if it was certain situations that it was really frustrating to you to try to explain and how important is to involve in this sector, and especially to people who doesn't know anything or they think it's for children, because that happened.
Okay, I'm conscious of time and I'm not going to go too long, but the most frustrating thing for me here on the island is there's such a successful e-gaming industry here. So and when I first took the role, and I would be meeting different businesses and I'd be having conversations with them and say, hey, look, I want to talk to you about esports. There were some individuals that would be, oh, you mean e-gaming? You mean gambling? No. I mean esports. And the betting world and the gambling world, they don't like to use the word gambling. They don't like to use the word betting. So their players and esports players are totally different. So their games and our games, being in esports and video gaming, are different. So there's been a fair amount of education that was needed to people that might not necessarily work in the e-gaming space, but here on the Isle of Man, they probably know somebody that works in the e-gaming industry. And when you're trying to run, a tournament, an after-school tournament or a Rocket League tournament, and encouraging young people to come and play, the parents who aren't educated in that space, and they've known on the island, say, e-gaming is gambling, and if they don't know the difference between the two, it might prevent them on encouraging their son or their daughter to take part in that. So there has been a fair amount, and continues to be a fair amount, of education which needs to be done, regardless of how you spell esports, that esports is different to e-gaming and gambling. And the challenge is in the e-gaming world, it has, I'm not anti-gambling or anti-e-gaming. That if you look at Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike is a game that I grew up playing, and I'm very passionate about that Counter-Strike scene. It's been supported heavily by the betting world, and tournaments that have been ran, and the biggest tournaments in the Counter-Strike space generally have been funded by those in the betting world. So it is a constant kind of challenge in juggling that from an education point of view. But then again, as well, in the recent updates from China with regards to limiting play for under 18s on video games and online gaming, there's been a fair amount of, as in anywhere, not just on the Isle of Man, conversations taking place within households and within companies and departments around that very thing. Should you be limiting the amount of hours that young people play video games on? And I think the important thing is to remind people that a lot of video gaming and online gaming is not just about the playing of the games, it's the social aspect.
That's true.
It's, if anybody who games will know that sometimes they can spend just as much time in the lobby with their friends as they are gaming, and limiting that time can, especially in this world at the moment from a pandemic point of view, you're not just limiting the time that they can play, you're limiting the time that they can communicate with their friends and make new relationships and build relationships with other gamers. So I think there's a lot of education still that needs to be done to parents, especially, that gaming is so much more these days than just picking up a controller and playing. It's a method to help them, communicate and make new friends.
This is so important.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I think now I leave you with all the questions that we have, because if not...
if you don't mind me, I'm going to choose a question because we're running out of time.
Yes, of course.
So I want to highlight Ondrek's question. Ondrek was our guest last week, and I think this is important. What differences do you see between working in the private sector and the government sector?
Dude, okay.
Love it, the way you start.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that there are challenges working in government, being that, every penny that you spend effectively is the taxpayer's penny. And you have to make sure, rightly so, that what you spend is for the benefit of the economy, the benefit of the island. And sometimes there can be barriers, not barriers, there can be paperwork that you need to go through to be able to justify that spend and justify that initiative or justify that action. Whereas in the private sector, sometimes you can react quicker, you can move a little bit quicker. But then from a government's point of view, as we've already seen, if you can create those initiatives and you get support, your voice is a lot louder. An entire government getting behind an esports org like X7, that's so powerful compared to just a sponsor from the private sector. So while it can be frustrating at times to go through the red tape and go through the paperwork that is required in working in a government role, it's ultimately, the end goal is ultimately rewarding and for the benefit of growing in the industry. I don't know if that answers your question. I think it does. That's a good answer. I'll go with that.
Oh, okay. So perhaps
Yes, we
a
have
couple.
to. Yeah, a couple more. I think maybe Emilia, if you listen to us, I think he will forget us because I think the guest that we bring today is quite amazing. So we have to take advantage of that.
Yeah. So next question that we've got here: esports platform like Twitch a good way to give visibility to the LGBTQ plus community and raise awareness?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but cautionally with safety. You know, the platforms like Twitch, as we've seen, unfortunately, recently with the raids and I think it's so important on those platforms when you step into that you feel supported by whatever platform that it may be is going to protect you. And ultimately there's only so much that they can do, but and it's really good to see that Twitch is taking legal action on certain groups of individuals that have not been making and supporting a safe space from the LGBTQ side of things. But it's also exploring other platforms as well. I mean, there's some amazing Discord groups which you can put more control in and create more of a safe space and build up this groups that giving them opportunities to connect with other people in different parts of the world, communicate with each other and create that safe space and safe platform. There are things like Clubhouse. There's also think outside the box. I mean, obviously Twitch has got a larger reach, but with that larger reach, unfortunately, becomes more of a requirement to have protected and safe spaces.
So there you go, Mademoiselle Petit Knife. There is your answer. And Yasmina, do you want to read the last one?
Yes, for sure. So,
It was me, sorry.
Don't worry. The last question is actually from Alejandro. He just wanted to, if you can recommend it to start learning about esports industry, what your thoughts are about it.
Oh, this is one of my favorite questions. And it's a very simple answer, which is play some esports, watch some esports. Yeah. If you want to learn about, any industry, any sector, do it. If you want to learn about the esports industry, the first thing you need to do is watch some esports. The next thing is you need to compete. Look locally, where are your grassroots initiatives? Join a tournament, join a team. If you're not in a position to play yourself, then if you've got young kids, support them and encourage them and come along with them when they go and play in those tournaments. And you'll be able to learn so much more than anything that you'll be able to read online. And then listen to podcasts like this. So follow these podcasts and engage and answer any sort of questions, but also not be afraid to reach out to people as well in the industry, especially on LinkedIn. I think, I've found over the last 5 years, especially more and more, decision makers within the esports industry are making themselves available on LinkedIn to answer questions, to connect with these people. And whether or not that's, owners from tier 1 orgs, individuals like myself, there's casters on there now, there's pro players on there, players that are retiring. So definitely not being afraid to reach out, but make sure that you're framing your questions, correctly and not just looking for handouts. Keep saying that mantra of put value in before you try and take value out. Showcase that what you want to bring to the industry. Why do you want to learn more about esports? What do you want to do? What do you want to bring? But yeah, watch some esports, play some esports, download Hearthstone, play that. If your reaction times aren't quick enough to jump in a game of Counter-Strike or Valorant, play some esports.
It's the funniest homework ever. Just play.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The practice make the master, so.
Yeah. And as we are practicing here and becoming masters, unfortunately, we have to get to the ending of the show.
Yes, and actually I'm really sad about it because I will listen to you, Chris, all the night if it's possible, but still I think you need to rest, and I think Carmen as well and I because we have a long week as well, but it has been a really pleasure to have you, really.
Yeah.
It has been
Well, thank you
amazing.
so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. It's really,
Oh my God,
really,
there
really
is
great.
a last question. I don't know if it's possible to answer. Or maybe
Well, just it's a yes or no question actually. Do you have in mind taking part in any tournament? Are you gonna be a pro player now, Chris?
I've hung up any aspirations of being a pro player unless I put more time into Hearthstone. You know, my reaction times just can't keep up with these amazing young people that are playing, and I've spent enough time looking over the shoulders of pro players and seeing how quick their reactions are. I know when to admit I can't play pro. But I'd love to see maybe a senior tournament. Maybe anytime there's an opportunity to dust off my Counter-Strike skills is probably too much of a of a word, but just to start playing again, yeah, absolutely. But you won't see me in my name in lights anytime soon.
Oh, that's
well,
pity.
maybe if there is if there is a senior tournament, I hope to see you there. I hope so, Chris. Well, we have to
That's
start
beautiful.
closing, but it was really nice to see and to have you here.
Thank you.
So we will just put you down, and then we would close the presentation.
Thanks a lot. Speak to you
Thank you,
soon.
Chris.
Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
Carmen,
Yeah.
I think we have an amazing guest, an amazing person to actually have here. I have to thank everyone for watching us, for listening to this presentation. I hope if you can follow us for see more content, because of course, if you follow us, we can grow and give you more and more wonderful presentation as Chris, more wonderful guests as well. And well, don't forget that we have on Wednesday, I think, our colleagues from for marketing.
Yes. And another cool Walkers is starting soon too. So many shows to come this week and next week to watch. So do not miss them. Thanks to all the viewers who are here week after week. Thank you all for watching. This is possible thanks to you.
Thank you so much for everyone. So see you and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.